Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Accessibility August here on Dev Roulette Live. I am so pleased to have with me today Anna Cook and Stacy Carston Sporie. Some of you may be a little bit familiar with Anna. She is quite active on Twitter and an excellent accessibility advocate in that space. They're also a senior accessibility designer at Northwestern Mutual, and I always see them pushing for accessible and inclusive design as kind of a highlight there. I became familiar with Anna from her talk at AxCon this past conference, and I recommend that highly. I'll get that link dropped into chat. And Stacy is joining us. She was a former coworker of mine, and I'm going to give this opportunity to say that I immensely appreciate her mentorship during that time. I don't even know if you know that you were a mentor, Stacy, but I definitely credit you with getting me more excited about accessibility and appreciate our partnership working through the design system that we were working on at that time. So I'll just go kind of in our Zoom order here and toss it to Anna to give a little bit more intro if you would like.
Yeah, I think you spoke very well, and I appreciated the introduction. Yeah, I am a senior accessibility designer at Northwestern Mutual, as Stephanie touched on. I have been advocating for accessibility within organizations for an innumerable time, but over time, I've become more and more active in that space. So I would say the most more in the last 4 to 5 years. In terms of what that looks like as a designer, I think sometimes at the beginning of that process, I found that uh, so much emphasis was on development and accessibility. And I've come to realize that so much of accessibility it really depends on designers too. And so that's a big part of the voice I bring to that and to those conversations.
Awesome. And Stacy, anything you'd like to add for yourself?
All right. Yeah. So I'm Stacy Carston Sporie. Thank you for the introduction, Stephanie. It's really good to hear. I was helpful as a mentor. And I guess one of my favorite things is when I can talk to people later and they're like, yes, this accessibility thing was really exciting. And I wanted to pursue more of it. My background, I started initially as kind of a full stack, maybe focus on front end web developer at Nelnet, then Great Lakes, almost 10 years ago now. And kind of over the years, I've had some fantastic mentors myself. Mark, one of my coworkers, was really instrumental in getting the accessibility program off the ground at our company, and kind of really got more interested in it and wanted to pursue it more. So a few years ago kind of made a switch to the accessibility team. My title is accessibility architect, but it just kind of means we do just about anything digital accessibility. We're kind of take the lead in trying to promote, help teams get up and running, work with them to improve their software, and kind of keep track of ways we can improve the overall accessibility at the company as a whole.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for weighing in more. And any other links that I can add for you, we can make sure we get those either now or in the show notes later as well. All right. So for those who are new to this show, I should also mention what this is really about. So this is a show I do periodically. I started in June with some CSS topics. So the show, the idea, as it says here, is that I'm inviting mystery guests on a variety of topics. So we did CSS in June, and now we're doing accessibility. I will definitely add the link to the YouTube channel because we already had one this month on accessibility last week with Todd Libby and Carrie Fisher. So definitely catch up on what they had to talk about as well. And we have one more coming up Friday and the last one next, I believe, Tuesday. So we'll get all those links in chat so you can make sure to join us for the rest of Accessibility August. So the idea then is that you all in the audience did not know who the guests would be until they showed up on screen. And also, my guests did not know what the topics necessarily would be. They're related to their unique expertise, but they didn't know precisely what they would be until a few minutes before we came on stream. We still have an element of mystery here because the wheel will spin, so a motion warning on that. And I'll allow Anna to go first. I just kind of go in my Zoom order to make that easy. And I'll just, whenever you're ready, you can say start. And at that point, the wheel will spin. And you can just say stop and we'll see what it lands on. Whenever you are ready.
Start.
All right, wheel is spinning.
Stop.
Ooh, nice one. All right. This is one I had to just kind of copy in word for word from Stacy, because I appreciated it. The parentheses misuse of ARIA. So anything anything that brings to mind for you, whether it's literally misuse of ARIA, if you'd like to give kind of the audience a little bit of a definition maybe of ARIA, or I can do that as well. But whatever that topic brings to mind for you, and I'll go ahead and let you go first, Anna.
Yeah, I think I would like to give an exact definition. I consider ARIA programmatic support for assistive technology users. And usually it is used to build on top of things, hopefully that are semantically, sound, and then help support that for those users in a way that is equal and I think equal. I'll just say that. But I don't want to steal the thunder of Stacy here.
Yeah, go for it, Stacey. I know this is
All right.
something, I'll just interject super, super quick, but on my own, just quick anecdote is this is something when I worked with Bootstrap initially, which was a lot of years of my career. I stripped it out because I thought it was just cruft and I didn't understand. So fortunately, Stacey is responsible for being one of the people to help me turn that around. So anyway, go ahead, Stacey.
Sure. Yeah. So I think if you kind of, spend any time in the accessibility space, if you've heard about ARIA, you've probably heard someone mention that the first rule of ARIA is not to use ARIA if you don't have to. And it's really just something to keep in mind that one of the things that I kind of learned over the years is that when they wrote the ARIA Spectre, the people who work on it, a lot of times it kind of started with like desktop components and bringing those ideas to the web. And as someone who started, my mindset was from the web, and I have not done very much desktop, coding at all, is like I have a very different idea sometimes in mind of what these components are. So one of the first things I think you have to keep in mind is that what you may think of like what a tab panel is and how it works may not be how ARIA thinks of it. And so you either kind of have to shift like to the ARIA pattern to really make it accessible and implement that fully, or maybe you have to consider, okay, maybe tab panel isn't quite what I'm thinking here. We have to go in a different direction. Um, I do think like you do want to use probably a modern web app is going to have at least some ARIA, but things like ARIA expanded, things that have like simple true or false values are kind of the easiest place to start. If it's something that can stand on its own, like those are pretty simple to pick up, learn how to use, figure out how it works, and do some testing, maybe with a screen reader to kind of see like, okay, that's what I'm making happen here when I change this value. It's a really good place to start. And so I would like start there and then try to avoid the more complicated components and widgets unless you think you have a really good use case for it. And when you do, test it a lot. Like that is the point in time you want to be like different browser combinations, different screen readers, especially mobile devices, different assistive technologies on them. There's a lot of variables you're introducing. So you just need to test it a lot and make sure it works the way you're hoping it will.
Yeah, excellent. Just I pulled up on screen here. Let me know if there's a better link that I could go to kind of help just put this in context for folks. I pulled up the YARIA practices, and I'm just was highlighting the no ARIA is better than bad ARIA. I know I visit the design or the authoring practices quite frequently. I'm trying to get that link as well. I'm trying to get us to just a little example of hoping they'd have a little more code samples in here. I might have to go to the authoring practices to kind of show what we're kind of talking about when we're talking about ARIA. They're usually DOM attributes that actually begin, like are prefixed with ARIA, but not all the time. Here's one. So I pulled up just just grab the first one here for an alert dialog. So it's letting you know things like needing ARIA labeled by, described by, that it's a modal. And so Stacy, you were describing sometimes there's like kind of role ones associated. But as this one's also showing, sometimes it's about giving some sort of alternative text equivalent, which we often think of alt text. We know that from images, but you may be less familiar, folks in the audience, with things like ARIA labeled by and ARIA described by, and some of these sorts of things. There's a lot that goes into it, isn't there?
I think to add to this a little bit, I want to say usually when I'm seeing ARIA used, it's being stacked on top of designs that tend to have some inherent accessibility issues from the get go. And so you'll find, at least in my experience, I tend to find when ARIA is being used, it's being used because a designer has added a bunch of things that can't necessarily be made accessible using semantic code, or it's being used as an interim solution while they're trying to fix semantic code. Um, and that's, things like, imagine, for example, if you're looking at designs, let's say you've got a bunch of read more links on an article page, or things like that. You'll find that screen reader users can't hear, uh, you know read more and understand what that is connected to if they're just tabbing through the page. And so ARIA can help support things like that, where the link text is so general and used in multiple places that they need to specify the associated text or what's actually going to occur. And something like that could be solved in a myriad of ways, but usually you'll find people use ARIA when there is a need for an interim solution.
Yeah, all awesome information. Any last thoughts, or we can go to our next topic?
One other thought I had on the ARIA topic too was I think, design system and pattern libraries are also a really good spot to kind of dig into those more complex usages, because when you have that reusable code, someone can spend a lot of time crafting it, getting it right, making sure it works with different technology combinations, and then not have to redo that whole effort every time you need something like, say, a tab panel or similar.
Yeah, very, very true. Um, awesome. That was all really excellent information. A good way to kick us off, I think, on our various topics today. I'm going to switch back over to the wheel, and Stacy, it'll be your turn. So if you've just joined us, this wheel is going to spin, and so just a motion warning on that. But whenever you're ready, Stacy, I'll let you say start and then stop when you're ready to do that.
All right, let's start.
All right, wheel is spinning.
And stop.
All right. Oh, we're on the line, and the one below is what we just talked about. So the above the line is designers plus ally. So also, I say ally. I know some people say ally. Correct me if I. I kind of like the ally connotation there, but anyway. um, designers plus ally, which I had to shorten it for the wheels purposes, but I know Anna, your as a designer, your interest is kind of that collaboration between, and of course, Stacy, that's kind of what you and I did when we worked together, is have that same kind of partnership. So, anything that brings to mind for you, whether it's about the collaboration, tips you wish designers knew, anything around that.
Sure. I'm sure Anna will have lots of excellent things to add to this, but um, getting designers involved in accessibility is absolutely crucial. It kind of got brought up on the ARIA topic. If you're working with a design that's difficult and trying to fill things in later, it's always kind of harder to do that. And designers really have a huge impact just on how accessible the final design is. Also, things like visible focus. I know that's another topic I submitted, but when our designers are thinking about that ahead of time, it's much more likely that the end product is going to have good focus styles for it. When it's just kind of left up to the developers, I was always a developer. I was like, oh, I want this to be there, but someone else might not think about it, and then you get a much less consistent end product as well.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go ahead just real quick and put in the chat because Sarah, and forgive me, I'm terrible with pronunciation in all cases, but Sarah Svidon recently actually published a blog post about focus indicator accessibility. And I think that's a really relevant one to this particular discussion. I think in terms of designer accessibility work, it's one of the places where I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities going forward. Where I think right now a lot of designers are not trained to think about accessibility, and that happens with developers too, but it's way more common with designers right now. And so designers who are understand or capable of understanding even a basic level of accessibility considerations have a competitive edge. And so to me, that's not to say that that's the main reason we should care about accessibility, but if you're a designer and you're looking to specialize or set yourself apart, start learning about accessibility. I think, as Stacy had touched on, shifting this left into design and in product requirements means that we are setting developers up for way more success, and QA, of course, and means we can catch, what was it, 67% of accessibility issues before they go into development. That statistic came from DQ in a case study they have done. Um, so it's a huge asset if you're thinking about accessibility within design, and it solves a lot of problems before they even get into development. It also means that we're thinking about users from a broad, much not broad, but more less of an average perspective, because the average user doesn't exist. And if we're designing for averages, we design for nobody. So at the end of the day, when we look at inclusivity and we start to consider that in our design process, we can make designs that innovate far more and really create the best work out there. I know I'm doing my stump speech right now, but I'm always a huge advocate of getting designers like into that process.
No, I think that needs to be highlighted as often as we can. I think that's kind of the next stage here. We've done I mean, from my perspective as a developer, um, I, and granted, since I'm a developer, I see a different lens of content anyway. But it is a lot developer focused and it's a lot to shift through. And usually, I did pull up that DQ article you're talking about. I believe it's the shift left. That idea that by the time it gets to development, some of these things are much, much too late, especially if they've designed very complicated interactions. One that I find myself advocating for and educating about more frequently lately is things like keyboard access, and even down to what I consider to be kind of a basic thing, but that's just because I am a user of the web and use the web with my keyboard sometimes, is things like tab order and how that really affects how things are interpreted, or even to the level of how things are maybe read out, which of course that may be the only experience someone has with your interface. And so if it doesn't really make sense how the content's flowing, all these things come together, right? And so if you're handed a design that's missing all that thought, yeah, it's super hard to do. It's not just about can we add ARIA or can we, do this in CSS? Can we theoretically, semantically mark this up? But does it actually make sense? And are we still encompassing the full UX that we need here in terms of making it inclusive for all users? So anyway, you can tell I've this is like an area I feel like I definitely identify with, even though I'm not myself a designer, but that I would hope all the developers in the audience, start, feeling empowered to help do that education back to whoever you're working with. So I think that's a super important part of this this part of the conversation. But yeah, any other thoughts on that topic?
I'll add one more thing if it's okay, Stacy. Let me know if you also want to add anything. Um, I I would say, and I might be biased, but I believe that learning about accessibility has made me a better designer, and it's made my relationships with my development teams better because I am better able to communicate what should be happening both in terms of interactions and in terms of, not in terms of like code, like I'm not building things in code, but I understand what should happen and why. And that's really, really powerful, not just in terms of accessibility, but also broader usability considerations. So I would say accessibility makes us better designers.
So we always come up with at least one thing that we need on a t-shirt when we do these kinds of things. Yeah. Do you have any less things here on this one, Stacy?
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, and kind of along those thoughts too. I think it really helps for teams that have, like a mix of developers maybe at different levels of comfort with like HTML and CSS to get a lot more of that kind of what's the intended goal from the design side of things, and it helps them out implementing as well. And I would say, at least in my personal experience, I notice a difference in the products from teams who, have designers who are working with them who are knowledgeable about accessibility, versus products where maybe it was something legacy before, a design team was really brought on board with accessibility and stuff and kind of the overall accessibility of that product.
Yeah. Yeah, all good things. We had one thing come into chat I just wanted to bring up. Um, it's important to advocate for designing for all interactive components so that all users actually know they're interactive. Really good point. Screen reader users don't necessarily see focus unless they know what to focus on. A really excellent point. I it brings to mind for me the fact of folks doing maybe a little bit too much with CSS. I had a smashing article on that I can share in the chat. Um, but when you use like a radio button, but it's not a radio button, and things like that, in terms of just the hack around, just using components from what they're not really for, even though it's a quote unquote native component, and you can do it, it's not really the best solution. So, really good point. I just realized that's Mark. Hey, Mark. My brain just connected the name there. Thanks so much for joining. Cool. Well, we can shift to our next topic here. Whoops, wrong keyboard control there. Um, let's see. Are we back to Anna? That was just our, or my. Yes, we're back to Anna, I think. For spinning the wheel.
Awesome. Go.
All right. The motion warning. I forgot that. I apologize.
And stop.
Okay, so kind of a good next step, I think, from that last one. Just generally advocating for accessibility.
Yeah, I think advocating for accessibility is I usually will say you don't always know how to do, or sorry, you don't necessarily have to know how to make things accessible to advocate for accessibility. And that's not to say you shouldn't learn how to or how to make things accessible, but the ability to get the time and resources to actually practicing accessibility sometimes does rely a little bit on advocacy. Excuse me, words are hard. So, what that means is, I think, in my opinion and in my experience, that can mean anything from presenting a business case to showing people that disabilities are not rare or edge cases, in the sense that many people have disabilities or will have disabilities at any point in their lives. As Amani Barbarin says, disabled people are the only marginalized group you can join at any time. And so talking points like that are important. It's also really important, if you can, to just start making things as accessible as possible in the practice that you have, and showing people how easy it can be to bake things in or to have conversations around it. And I think those are really some big steps. Talk to your managers. If you want to make a place for this, if you want to advocate for this, they can help you do that. They can help sponsor those efforts, and take small steps. Everything that we do is better than nothing.
Yeah, excellently put. How about yourself, Stacey? What's important to you about advocating for accessibility?
Well, those are all really great points. And I kind of want to launch off of that kind of, talking to your managers and stakeholders. I think in my experience, the key to success is really getting the buy-in from those higher levels. I've been maybe fortunate. I've never been in a room and saying, hey, accessibility is great. Making sure our software is accessible to people who are disabled is an important thing. And I've never had someone go like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't care about them. Everyone at least says, like, yeah, this is good. This is something we should do. But when it comes to the actual making of the thing, product teams are getting constant requests for this new feature, that new feature. Can you fix this bug? someone thinks like, "Hey, I had a new design idea, let's run with this and see where it goes." There's a lot of stuff most teams have to try and keep up with, and so they have to be able to, make the time for accessibility. And that starts with, learning a bit about it. What is accessibility? What are the things I can do to make changes? But you also have to have that prioritization. And it's really helpful if your managers are saying, okay, we're going to make sure we tackle some of these accessibility issues on our backlog, or your stakeholders are saying, this is important to us. When we do a review with the stakeholders, can you demonstrate some of these accessibility features, support for screen readers or other assistive technology that you've added?
Yeah,
All of that really helps. And I think it's really important to be able to build a more sustainable accessibility program.
awesome.
One other thing I just kind of wanted to add, I think kind of the advocating for accessibility thing. One that I think is really important too, that I think organizations should spend more time thinking about, is how accessible is your organization internally? Not just your external users, but what about your employees, your coworkers, the associates you work with? Are we able to hire someone who's disabled and make sure they have the tools they need to do well in their role? Or are there gaps there that you really need to address?
Yeah, excellent. And to further on that, I was wondering if we could kind of also under this topic talk about, because you both have experience with this. Um, Specifically, do you have any tips on kind of making headway on advocating for accessibility within a larger organization? Because it's one thing to be like Greenfield Products, a startup, but what about specifically in a large org? Anything you found useful? Again, I'm happy to pull up links and references as well, or resources. Either one
Well,
of.
uh, Zoom's always funny because you never know who's going to speak. Same with any meeting software. The I think I said this the other day, but it's been on my mind a lot lately. I think advocating for accessibility is a change management thing where it takes time. It takes, energy over uh, periods. Like you can make efforts and they will have an impact, smaller impacts, but larger organizational accessibility tends to require training, tends to require time that the organization hopefully should be able to give folks. And it should hopefully, include resources available to people on teams. Now, I would say that every effort counts, but if you really want to have an impact and include disabled users and include not even just disabled users, but really make comprehensively inclusive experiences, you as an organization should prioritize having roles that are dedicated to accessibility within an organization, having trainings that are engaging and supportive, allowing folks to get reviews on their designs and their code to help make sure that what's getting pushed out is accessible, or rather, I should say, as accessible as possible, because it's not on or off, it's less or more. So, what I would say is be prepared for the long game. There are short wins that you can have and keep pushing for those, but be patient. People take time to change, and um, pushing for accessibility is it's a systemic issue that goes beyond tech. And I'll stop rambling. I could talk forever.
No, I loved all that. That was great. Yeah, anything to add, Stacy?
Yeah, kind of along those similar lines. I think one thing that's really helpful is when we bring on new employees, new interns, or someone being able to do like basic accessibility training, at least kind of gets it at least as a thought in their mind, as something, and they know there is a team to reach out to. So, at least in our case, I mentioned I was part of the accessibility team. We kind of try to be that point of contact. Um, and then kind of the opposite side of that is if we can make those connections with the executives in the company and they can kind of at least, include it as part of their initiatives for, the next quarter, the next year, that helps bring it up as something on people's minds. If for, larger companies, if you have internal events where different teams present, Our team's done events like that where we just kind of present, what is accessibility? What are some of the basics? That helps us get connections across the company so that people can then reach out and say, hey, I have this product and I'm kind of curious how accessible it is. Can you take a look at it? And building those connections and lines of communication has been really important to helping improve accessibility.
Yeah, super awesome tips. I've seen several of those at work, both before and in my current org. And that idea that somebody has folks know where to turn, whatever shape that takes, for assistance, I think is a huge way to win, if you can make that happen. But also takes a lot of coordination for sure if it doesn't already exist. Mark says, thunderous applause. Make accessibility as fun as you can. Celebrate victories. Oh, and he says, Stacy made the coolest sticker ever recently as an example.
All
So,
right, I'll show it off if you
all
don't
right.
mind.
Yeah,
This
definitely.
is this is our sticker. Mark loves Star Wars, and I love Star Wars too. It's great. So we've kind of had our accessibility Jedi Council. That's Mark started that before me. It's been awesome, and so we've made some things along that theme. I also, it's really hard to see. I have an Ally Jedi T-shirt as well.
Love it. I think you still
Where
mailed me
can one
one.
buy this? I would like to procure said t-shirts and stickers.
I'll have to see. I've been cautious about, just opening up online because it is a Disney property technically, but I may be able to acquire stickers for people who want them.
Well, no pressure, but I like Star Wars too, and it's very cool.
Awesome.
Love it. Love it. Swag for everything. That's how to get people on board. It's just how it is. Oh goodness. Awesome. Well, any last thoughts on that one? I think we can get to at least one more topic before we kind of have to close down for today. So any last thoughts before we move on? Good. Alrighty. So, Stacy, over to you for our next topic. And a motion warning for those that have joined more recently. This wheel is going to spin after Stacy lets me know to start.
Spin the wheel
All right, spinning now.
and stop.
All right. Oh, we did both of those. All right, respin.
All right, stop.
All right, so the topic is accessible components. This feels like a good one to kind of end on, kind of bring together some of the ideas we've talked about. So you can take whatever angle you'd like on this.
Yeah, let's see. Maybe I'd start kind of from the perspective, since we worked on a lot together stuff. Design systems, pattern libraries, having those accessible components there is, I think, such a huge benefit. And it's something I can see, it makes it a lot easier for teams too, especially I think the easiest is when you're working on a greenfield software, something new, being able to say, okay, so I have this design library that already has accessible components built in. I can pull those in, use those in my software, and it gives you a huge leg up. Um, but even for existing software too, if you can kind of make the transition to using something that it simplifies some of the challenges, which are sometimes just the testing time for new accessibility features. There's a lot of things to test. It can be hard to kind of fit it in with your other priorities. Not saying it's an excuse not to test, but sometimes you can have the confidence that at least things are going to be at least in a little bit better shape than you might have started out otherwise. One of the other really cool features that I'd like to see maybe more people doing and talking about that you worked on, Steph, was building into that system like warnings for common errors that we see and ways to kind of notify devs that, okay, this is a really common tricky error. It looks like you're missing something, or just make sure you double check this component. Because there are definitely limitations to your design system, and every implementation is going to be a little bit unique, and especially some of the more, I don't know, maybe pain points, really basic stuff like making sure your IDs line up and they properly associate labels or ARIA attributes and stuff is really common area for teens to just accidentally mess up if you're going too fast or kind of stuck in that copy and paste mode. So having ways built in to check for that, I think, can also be a big benefit.
Yeah, super good point. Just to add a little color to that one, the system we were working on was cross-platform, but so we had a static version of HTML, CSS, but also a React version. So in the React version, since it was already JavaScript, we were able to do a little detection and for kind of those low hanging things like, oh, you're missing an ARIA label, but you need it in this instance because you're using an icon button, things like that, where you can programmatically detect that and give kind of a gentle warning. And those are the types of things that can also be caught with like browser tools. But the benefit for the design system tooling is we could point them also back to our design system documentation so they could get an example in line of how to properly use specifically that component. So just like a little extra boost, to hopefully tie that together is something to look into if you are doing design system. That can certainly one of the benefits of going through the work of doing a design system is building in some safeguards like that when you can. But yeah, awesome. Anna, I know that your talk that I saw was basically around this topic. So go for
Yeah.
it.
Well, I'll go ahead and add the article I wrote with DQ on
Awesome.
this one into the chat real quick. Or no, I don't think they can watch the video, but there's an article, so they can use that.
I'll pull it up.
One of the things, I think that is really powerful about teams with design systems or having a design system in the first place is that you could already build in better accessibility from the start using a design system. Now, as both of our other chat folks have mentioned, it doesn't necessarily mean that you get out of the box accessibility because implementation details can change how accessible a component is by default. For example, your form field component might be accessible, but if the label doesn't make sense, well, a component can't fix that copy. So there's things like that can be kind of broken in implementation. So it's important to be mindful that even a comprehensive and really well built design system will require some thought around implementation, just the same way in terms of usability as accessibility. So there's going to be it will still require designers love and touch and care and developers too. So that I think is super awesome. I think if you're a designer that's interested in accessibility, I would advocate for you to ask for the time to audit a design system for accessibility considerations, especially if something isn't released yet and you have the ability to fix something before it goes out. I think that's a really great skill to have, and it makes you a really good asset to the team. And it also means you can still learn while you're doing those audits. You don't have to know everything off the bat, just the same way with all design and development. So I'll try to cut off my rambling again.
No, it's very good. And I've been kind of just scrolling through your article, which I definitely recognize some things from your talk as well. I think what's really stood out to me and is something we don't always communicate very well is that for folks that work with a design system or a framework, is you can only do so much at the component stage. You kind of both weighed in on this already, but I love your example that I have up here on a form. In a form, yes, you can make the input technically have accessibility features, correct contrast, enforce use of a label, but at the end of the day, there's so much that can go wrong in the actual implementation of that. Um, I think where I see the ball dropped a lot on forms is errors and validation, and that's a whole can of worms we could probably spend an entire dev roulette about is accessibility of forms. Um, and it's interesting to me that something like a form or something like a button, literally two of the most basic and critical components of every application, no matter what size it is, and we still can't, there's still so many classic errors that happen for each of those. So very interesting. It kind of reinforces for me, that just like any other aspect of development or design, accessibility is an area to just be continually learning in. And that's kind of why I wanted to do this Dev Roulette. It's bring on folks such as yourselves to help us learn about these topics that maybe we haven't examine too closely, and get some good tips of where we can start, and maybe start to notice where our own teams can improve or our products can improve, and start to um, just bring in these ideas and start to improve them right away. I think Anna, you mentioned that earlier. Is what can you do basically right now? What improvements can you make? And a lot of them are behind the scenes, but I think the themes for me were from today were, trying to talk about it much more early in the process and kind of spreading that knowledge around, whether that's within your own team or trying to open space for folks to know where to go when they have accessibility questions. Um, so I really appreciate the conversations today. We didn't get to it on the wheel, but I think a good kind of just closing little small topic is, for each of you to answer would be, why do you do it? And then anything else you would like to share before we close out. And sorry, Anna, you can go first.
Okay. Um, I the reason I do it, I think I'm actually writing a chapter on this right now for the book I'm working on. I think every accessibility advocate doesn't they don't exactly have like a story, like an inspirational tale, as it were. But a lot of us kind of realized over time that accessibility and inclusive design make better products. And I think for me, I've watched that happen, and I've witnessed it happen not just when it comes to myself, but the people I know. And so for me, I think the reason I do this is because I fundamentally believe and have seen the evidence that inclusive design builds products that perform better. And, if you care about money, sell better. And so, an example I use of this is Nike's Go Fly E sneakers. Now that sneaker, there's some cans of worms that have been associated with that in terms of a reduced release, but they're very popular because they were designed with disabled folks in mind from the get-go, and they people like them, they work well. And so I think there's just so much power and so many opportunities for us to do better, in ways that are substantial. And so I want to be a part of that. I want to be on the front of that and make something that works really well. And I don't think anybody I know is normal. So it means a lot when I can make something work for the people I love and people I don't love too.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Everybody. Love it. Go ahead, Stacey.
All right. So there is a quote by Judy Human that I really like, and we use it in some of our presentations. Hopefully I got it correct, but it goes, for people without disabilities, technology makes things convenient, but for people with disabilities, it makes things possible. And I think one of the things that really excites me about the accessibility space is really kind of the possibility we open up, ways to use technology. I kind of go back, like thinking about, maybe when I was a kid, and I read a lot of sci-fi, and you think like, wow, these like earth-shattering technology changes and really cool things. But I think technology moves in like it's a much smaller, kind of quieter like ways our lives change. And you don't realize it until you're looking back like 15 years ago before smartphones were a thing at all. And you're like, wow, things are so different. But what I feel really opens up like possibilities to like write a book and provide it to people in a format that they can make work for them, whether that's larger text, different fonts, audio books, having it read out, all of those things can kind of exist within one format. And that's kind of the possibility I want to help realize, is that, we can share information, share websites, parts of our lives, and have it be something that people can take and then modify the format to a way that works really well for them. And I think that's really cool.
Love it. Yeah, that idea of preferences and just the, accessibility helps everyone. You may not even know why or how, and um, love it. That was great stuff to end on. Any last resources or anything? Anna, you just mentioned your book. Do you have a pre-order open? Like any last things you want to kind of promote or make sure folks know about?
I'll mention real quick, the release date for the book is supposed to be next year, so there's a little bit of time. That being said, I am going to do an audio version of that book, which I'm really, really excited about because I was like, "Can we make this happen?" And my editor was like, "Let's find out." And I was like, "Yes, I want to. I want to make." And as a dyslexic person, I love audiobooks. So no, that is something I'm thinking about and really, really excited about. But um, there will be more news on that, and I will make sure people can know about that. Most likely via Twitter, where I am obnoxiously active at times. So, but I think for me, that's my biggest update.
Love it. That's going to be exciting. And everybody look out for that. I will pop both of your Twitters, by the way, back in chat. So everybody make sure to have those and they can keep up to date on everything you're both doing. But yeah, Stacey, any other things you would
Uh,
like to add?
I don't have anything specific to promote. I tend to be a little bit quieter online, but I know Anna and Stephanie do put out like awesome tweets and articles and stuff, and I think it's really cool. You give me things to read and hit the like button on Twitter at least. So thank you for inviting me. This was really cool, and I hope everyone can find ways to, make the world a little bit more accessible and inclusive to everyone.
Awesome. Thanks again to both Anna and Stacey. Make sure to follow them. Links to everything's in the chat, and we will see you on Friday.